And if the audience has any questions, they can go ahead and put in the chat, and I'll go ahead and bump them over to you. But I think I'm double checking everything. I think we are good to go. We are live on all those three platforms, and yeah, thanks so much everyone for tuning in. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Gracie and Dominic, for getting us off on time. Should we go ahead and get started?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think we're good to go.
Okay. Let us know when we're live, Gracie.
You are live, ready.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, everyone. Welcome to a roundtable for the Vero for Mayor campaign. We are so extremely honored and excited about this conversation. It's a long-awaited conversation about really women in the military. We set out to identify women in the community. As you all know, El Paso has a very strong representation of the military, both in terms of current service members as well as veterans. We are a military city, and we have a lot of women who are currently serving or have served, or who are advocates for people who have served. And so we're excited to have this conversation tonight. We're going to go through it and do some introductions, but I want to be clear that all of the people that we have invited have not endorsed me. This is not an endorsement type of roundtable. This is a conversation with community members. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And I don't know if anyone wants to go first, or should I call on names?
Hello, everybody. My name is Aldina Hyder. I'm a United States Army veteran. I served in Hawaii and then here at Fort Bliss. And I actually ended up getting out of the military here at Fort Bliss and staying here.
I'm Karina Gomez. I'm from El Paso, Texas. I was stationed at Holloman Air Force Base from 2005 to about 2017. I did a lot of tours. I ended up getting medically retired, and I came back home to El Paso, Texas. I wasn't too far away, but I'm back home now.
Thank you, Karina.
I'm Specialist Michaela Carruthers, and I'm currently serving. I've been in for about 2 years, and I actually was born and raised in El Paso, and I'm still here in El Paso.
I'm Mary Gordeau. I'm a retired teacher, and I think I'm here because I was what is called an Army brat. And I spent half of my school years in Department of Defense schools in Germany, plus all of my school years as a military dependent. And I am a member of the Border Peace Presence. And I just want to add that the current peace movement is much more interested in the welfare of soldiers than we were in the 1960s. I've been in El Paso for over 50 years, so I feel like I am an El Pasoan. And thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Thank you all. We're calling these conversations, it's not the waking, it's the rising. And the waking, we hope to spend some time on, and that's really to help the rest of us understand your perspective, your experiences, and the things that you would like to see change. The rising is really about the collective action that we will hopefully bring together as we pull together our resources, our compassion, and our skills to improve the lives of the people that we're focusing on in the roundtable, in this case, the military. And, you know, we just celebrated Independence Day, and it was, I have to be honest, a very challenging one for me because of all of the things that our country is going through, all of which point to the need to have better and stronger and more compassionate leadership. When it comes to the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement, the issues of police brutality, as well as the most recent cases involving Fort Hood, which include Vanessa Guillen. But then there have been other people that have also been sexually harassed or assaulted at the base. all of these issues have sort of culminated to bringing attention to a lot of injustice in our communities. And so we wanted to take a moment to, again, talk to our service members in El Paso, because we are a community that loves to do parades. We love to give discounts to the military. But when it comes to really addressing these hard issues, we have failed. And with that, we're gonna talk about, we understand as a community, I think that there are a number of issues that veterans and service members have to deal with. Housing, access to quality healthcare, including mental health care, as well as job opportunities after you retire or after you leave the military. And then when it comes to survivors of sexual assault, we need to talk about accountability and justice, and really prevention. How do we really start to transform our cultures, our civilian culture and our military culture, in order to not have this be an issue year in and year out? So as we talk about the waking, right? The things that you would want other people to know about your experience. We wanted to ask you about why you joined the military. Where were you recruited? How old you were? What were your expectations? And is there something that you wish that you had been told before you enlisted?
I think ultimately the reason I joined the military was because our family needed, financial support, and that would have been a good source. Also, my grandfather and my godmother were both in the Army, so I did see it as like a big step. I originally wanted to join the Marines, and they spent a great deal of time at our high school. But ultimately, I ended up joining the Air Force. I do feel that was the best decision I ever made. Not knocking anybody else's decision, but when it comes to deployment, to housing and stuff, we are very spoiled. However, I mean, that's just the reason why I joined. And like I said, there were a bunch of recruiters in our high school, and that's how we found out about it. But I always wanted to be a Marine, but I ended up being an airman.
Can I ask you why you wanted to be a Marine?
Because I guess, well, when I was younger, we would get recruiting notices. And I remember then we had CD-ROM games, and we got a CD-ROM game of being a Marine and what it takes to be a Marine. And it's pretty much, you have to go through an obstacle course. And at the end, it congratulates you and it calls you a warrior, and you're strong and you have all these ethics, and it blows up your head like you're like this big bad person, and you're a good fighter or you're a good person. And that's why I wanted to be a Marine, and I thought their uniforms were pretty cool.
They are pretty cool, yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty short, so in the Air Force, I look like a blueberry. So
I am 5 feet tall. I look like I'm dressed up for Halloween in my dad's uniform all the time. I'll go. The reason I enlisted, I was 20 years old when I enlisted. 19, 20 when I swore in, and then I shipped off to basic when I was 20 years old. And my reasoning really, if you ask anyone I went to high school with, they would say the last person in the history of the world that they ever would have thought doing like enlisting would have been me. And my biggest reason was just, I was struggling with school and paying for school, and I wanted to get it figured out. I knew my education was important to me, but I knew that I wanted to build my education in whatever way I could. And I really wanted to be a strong woman. So I didn't know anybody in the military. My parents weren't military people. I just went in on my own into a recruiter's office, and it all happened really quick for me that I was swearing in. And that's my ultimate goal, was just really, I wanted to get my education and be as strong of a woman as I could be. And I've been serving ever since.
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and go next. I joined the military in 2005. I actually turned 21 during my basic training, which was kind of odd. I joined the military primarily because I am a war refugee. I was actually born and raised in Bosnia, and my first experiences with the military were through soldiers who came in and did the peacekeeping missions in Bosnia post-war. So it was very impressive. It was something that it kind of became very near and dear to my heart. However, when I migrated here to the United States, I was still too young to join. And post 9/11, my mom was pretty much telling me, no, it's not happening. You're not doing it. You're crazy. You're insane. I ended up moving to San Antonio for school. And that's actually where my home of record is with the United States Army. I came across a recruiter hanging out with my friends at the mall on day off from school. He still, till this day, calls me the worst recruit he's ever had. And that's because I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something that I actually enjoyed, that I would not be bored with. I'm not a stagnant person, so I always have to have my hands on. And I walked out on him so many times because he would offer me jobs like truck driver, light wheel mechanic, and I told him, no, that's not something that I want to do. So the last day at my recruiting station that I ended up being there, recruiters, there's a little secret. Recruiters like to hide their screens, so you won't see exactly what's going on. And me being the nosy person that I am, I told him, can I see everything that you're showing me? Because I feel like you're skipping things. You're not telling me everything. And, at the time, the United States Army alone had such a huge amount of critical shortage on jobs, on particular jobs that nobody wanted to do. And cook was one of them. So I saw it, I liked it, and I told him, actually, I want to do that job. But I asked him what's all the other stuff that's added to the screen, and it was like, it had different little codes, and he explained it to me. Well, it's a contract set in time. You have to do 4 years. You will be guaranteed a duty station in Hawaii. And I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
Hawaii, who doesn't want to go there? But little did I know that exploring the world came with a whole lot more than just seeing the world. It came with a world of responsibility. It definitely did. And that's what recruiters don't tell you. You kind of carry a burden on your shoulders every single day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because even when you're not wearing a uniform, you're still expected to behave a certain way, to speak a certain way, to carry yourself a certain way. So I feel like a lot of people forget that. Unfortunately, a lot of our troops, they get carried away in the moment, and they just see one-way street versus everything else that it entails.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry. For the live for Facebook, how do they reach that?
Oh, it's through the Veronica Carbajal for mayor.
Oh, okay.
Let me know if it doesn't work.
I'll go ahead and drop the link for that.
And it's also on YouTube as well. Mary, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I guess I'll skip that question since I never joined. But I did want to say that the power of the recruiters is intense, and coming from my background, wanting more peace, I am concerned about how much money and time is spent in recruiting, and we just want to be sure that young people understand, why they're going in, and like Aldina says, it's a pretty serious job that you're getting into, and so I've worked on trying to help people improve recruitment so that students, particularly high school students, go in with their eyes wide open.
So,
Yeah,
so I think the biggest issue with that is that in United States, and I learned this as time went on, and because I do have friends that I've served with who are currently in recruiting, you have to be 17 to join, and it's with parents' permission. And unfortunately, a lot of parents are not actively involved in doing the research and finding out what does it come with. Yes, you have this fancy little package that tells you, oh, you get free college and you have free medical, but they forget to tell you about all the headaches that it comes with. And that's where a lot of women, especially, I feel like, and I know this is kind of a harsh word, I don't regret my service. My military service, I don't regret it at all. But I feel like because recruiting is majority male dominated, female recruits get bamboozled into these fairy tale jobs and fairy tale duty stations. Because, for example, when they told me I was going to Hawaii, I thought that was amazing. I'm going to be right by the ocean. I get to, and in reality, Schofield Barracks alone was about 30 minutes from closest beach. So it was so far out and away from everything that you still had to, but those are the stories that they tell you. That's what they're taught. That's what recruiters are taught. They're taught to tell you a really, really good story.
I was 17 when I joined, and I did have to have my parents' approval. My mother did do her research when I was gun-ho about being a Marine, and she was like, no, ma'am, I'm not going to sign for it. You're going to have to wait till you're 18. And I was so excited and I was so pumped to go that, I settled and I was like, all right, I'll do Air Force. And that's why I ended up there. And, I'm forever thankful for that. But she did, I think when it comes to being 17 and when they do go to high schools, what they fail to tell the parents and what they fail to tell, the kids, essentially, because we were children. We are considered adults at a certain age, but we're still in that child mindset. We still have our parents, and I think what they fail to tell you is, I was Air Force, so I really can't speak too much to, as in the conditions we had, but they were fairly well. They're not something that is ideal, but those conditions aren't set. They don't tell you, this is what's going to happen. You're going to be separated from your parents. Communication is going to be limited. You're going to basically be by yourself. And they make you believe, again, that, you're going to have your battle buddies with you, that you're going to have your teammates. So you're going to be great, but they don't let you know of those dangers behind those. Yeah. And the parents don't know. And they think that they're sending their kids into, like Vanessa again, they think that they're sending their kids to fight for their country and, that this is going to be great. And there's so many benefits to it. They don't ultimately tell you the dangers of it.
Karina, growing up in the military, and I need a disclaimer here. I know some very good people who are recruiters, okay? So I'm not condemning all recruiters or recruiting, but I have to say, growing up in the military, it was a joke. We knew you never trust a word that a recruiter tells you, because one thing, and this, I know, again, this isn't true of everyone, but there's a lot of pressure on recruiters. I mean, they are under unbearable pressure to recruit, to perform, and to bring in people. And I'm sure they believe in what they're doing, but sometimes people who are unfamiliar with the military don't understand that. And I grew up with lots of jokes about, when you go to join in, you're going to be promised this, and it never happened. Hopefully that has changed somewhat, because that was
There's a lot of reading in between the lines. I think that they just don't mention the big bonuses that they promise you, but then you are enlisted and you find out like, oh, but you only get half of that, and then you have to serve 3 years, you get the other half, like little things like that happen. I don't think I've met one soldier that got absolutely everything perfectly that they had intended was going to happen, but that's just the system. And I do think that what we should be teaching is inform yourself. Make sure you know what you're signing up for. Ask questions.
Yeah.
Always ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question.
Yeah.
You always need to ask.
Yeah, and it may be exactly what you want, but you want to be informed. And because children are, I know you're not children anymore, but people are children at 17. And what do they say? The frontal lobe isn't fully developed yet. And
like 25, yeah.
25, right.
Yeah.
So you do need a lot of guidance. And so as El Pasoans, I think we want to encourage our schools to guide students, because I don't want to get off on this, but there's an opt-out program that we could talk about another time. But yeah, we want to be responsible for our children. We want the military to be a good neighbor, a good part of our community.
Yeah, my mom did ask the questions. She did, want to know everything. And I think my recruiter was amazing. I don't have anything bad to say about him. He was great.
Yeah.
But I forgot where I was going with this.
My husband has a friend whose husband is a recruiter. Beautiful people. So, I know we have to be careful with everybody into one.
Oh yeah. So my mom did ask the questions, but I was just like, yeah, come on, just sign it. Just sign it. Just let me go. Yeah. Just let me go. Just sign it. So it also falls on me, but those are things that you need to know. And the whole Air Force doesn't deploy is a complete lie. So don't.
Or the Army. Or I had a friend tell me just the other day, I might join the Army Reserves because reserves don't deploy. I was like, yes, they do. I was like, don't. Oh my God.
That is, yeah. And that's a complete lie. And I remember when I joined in 2005, one of the things that a lot of people did not understand actually is that National Guard and reserve units were the first ones to go when the war in Iraq and Afghanistan happened. They were the first ones to be deployed. So as a matter of fact, between 2001 and 2004, majority of soldiers who were killed in action were actually National Guard and reservists. And that's the scary part.
Good point.
Yeah.
Well, the three of you that have served have been on deployments, right? And you've served during.
I have not. I have not been deployed yet.
Okay.
I've got quite a few.
Yeah,
That's why I said the Air Force not deploying is a lie. I got like about 9. So.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow. So Corina and Aldina, you have served. We had a small break where we didn't have war. Our country was not at war, but you have both served during times of war. And and our country has, a few years ago finally started to address the incidence of high suicide rate among soldiers who had been deployed, as well as mental health issues, including PTSD. How do you define PTSD for someone who doesn't understand when it comes from being in deployment?
I didn't understand it at all. When I first started showing signs, I didn't get it. I thought that, it was to be seen that mental health was a bad thing. I didn't understand it. I was very aggressive. I was confused. My emotions were all over the place. I was sad for no reason. and there's a bad name on seeking help. And it wasn't until one of my superiors noticed it and was like, hey, sit down for a second, I want to talk to you. And you do essentially you do have good leadership sometimes. And her name, I can't remember it right now. I did have a TBI, so I'm really bad with my memory. But she did help me as far as understanding what was going on. I did seek help, and that is when you understand, you do have PTSD. It's seen as like you're aggressive or you're going to choke somebody out and stuff like that, but it's really just emotions. You can't control them. They're all over the place, and you're always on guard, and you just really never know how truly it'll affect a person, because it may be one way for me and may be another way for Michaela, and it just varies from person to person. What exactly happened that you have it, and it's got a bad name to it. And I think you need to shed more light on what it is and how to live with it.
Were you able to access resources either at the Air Force or locally, wherever you were?
When I was active duty, I did get help. I think it was, I don't want to say it was fresh or new, but the medications I was taking were extremely addictive. And I don't feel that they knew the extent of the damage that they were doing to someone with these medications. And if it wasn't working for you, oh, well, let's just turn it up a notch, So I was taking what a grown man should take, and nothing was happening. And I'm 5 foot nothing. And, so it's, I shouldn't have gone that far as that medication went. And it took therapy for me. And then when you transition from active duty and having that capability to constantly go to the civilian world, the VA, it took about 6 months to a year for me to start getting that mental health help. And it caused a lot of stress on relationships. It caused a lot of stress within my family. I did become a statistic, and I'm proud to say that I haven't overcome it, but I did rely a lot on alcohol. And that's what happens a lot to our veterans. And it's not ever seen as, can we help them? It's like, oh, you're out already. You're out of our hair. You're not our problem. And that's not true. That's when we should pay attention the most. That is when we should, be concerned for their well-being, because for somebody like me, I joined at 17. I learned to be an adult in the military. That was my identity, was military. And then when I had a traumatic brain injury and then I got medically retired, I had to learn how to be a person. And then on top of that, find my identity. On top of that, deal with anxiety. On top of that, deal with depression. And it was just so much gathered up in one huge, horrible ball that no one knew how to deal with it. And they just throw medication at you like if it was candy. And that's not, I don't feel that was taken care of correctly. And I feel that we need to take care of our veterans a lot more, because we show so much pride in joining our military, yet we don't show pride to our veterans once they're out.
Yeah. I remember in basic training, we had a drill sergeant tell us, the Army will take care of you as long as you can serve. Once you're injured, once you're out, they're not going to care about you anymore. And he drilled that in our heads. He would say, if the pack's too heavy, or if you feel like you're going to injure yourself, stop, because they're not going to take care of you once you're done.
And that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right, because that's exactly what happened with me. I ended up having a reconstructive surgery on my cervical spine. And once they realized that I was no good, so they have different levels of profiles once you get injured in the Army, at least, where if you're a P3 profile, that's pretty much one leg out the door. You don't have a choice of what's going to happen next. You don't even get to ask questions of, well, can I change jobs? It's automatic. Here's your med board paperwork. Take it, you know, go. You have a choice to go to a warrior transition battalion. And at the time when I was getting out, warrior transition battalions were a joke. And I'm talking about it would take them longer to out process you than it would to spend another contract in the military. I mean, that's how long it would take. It used to take about 3 years just to go through warrior transition battalion. And I opted out to just say, you know what, keep your paperwork. My ETS, my getting out of date is coming up. I'm just gonna leave. Like this is I can't do it, because it was constant badgering. Well, are you going to go see your doctor? How long are you going to spend there? You know, if your doctor took longer than an hour, you were automatically doing something else or something wrong. And there was no trust. I felt like there was no trust between leadership and soldiers. And as a matter of fact, after I got out of the military, because my injury progressively got worse, the NCO that I had in Hawaii actually messaged me and apologized to me and was pretty much like, I'm really sorry. I thought it was just one of those, you're young, you don't feel like working, you just want to do all these. And I told him, no, that was not the case. Like, I was actually physically hurting, and I kept telling you, it hurts. It's not right. Yes, the injury happened, and the military is very known for doing the bare minimum. Put a Band-Aid on it, drink some water, take some ibuprofen.
Ibuprofen all the time.
That is their solution to everything. And that's the unfortunate part, that even when you go through what Karina went through, you know, TBI, they did not start recognizing TBI injuries until years post-deployments. To them, it was just, well, your head is messed up. It's mental. It's your personality. You know, there's something wrong with you, not with you physically. And there's so much stigma that PTSD carries on, even in civilian world. When you get out of the military and you put that I served in X, Y, and Z service, the first thing, and I guarantee you this because it's happened, the first thing that they ask you is, well, do you have, you know, did you serve overseas? What have you done in the military? And they'll kind of do the small innuendos just to kind of feel you and figure out, well, is this person crazy? Are they worth hiring? Are they just going to? And that's the scary part. That's not how our military should be looked at.
Yeah.
But
invisible injuries are the hardest ones to prove.
Yes.
Yeah,
I also blame our media, because our media demonizes military so much. You know, when we go in, we join for something so selfless. We don't expect anything in return. When we sign our names on that paper, we don't ask for anything back.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that. People don't understand that, yes, we're human. We make mistakes. Things happen, good and bad, but there's always going to be that judgment, unfortunately.
That bad stigma about PTSD is it's been demonized like you will not believe. You know, a perfect example is my partner. Her parents did ask me, you know, about it, and I had to explain to them that it's not crazy the way they make it seem on the TV. You know,
Yeah.
It's just, you know, I could drop a pencil and I dropped it wrong, or it could be like, wait, did I leave something on? Did I leave something on? And then the anxiety kicks in, and then you're like panicking. You know, it's got to.
You're not dangerous.
Definitely,
you're just.
You're not dangerous to anybody. You're just struggling to live your life. You're struggling to find your place in the civilian world because you made a commitment, a lifetime commitment. And once you grow into the military, that section, that part never leaves you. You will always respond, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Or if you say yeah, you'll apologize and say yes, ma'am, or no, ma'am. You'll always catch yourself doing that. Your levels of respect are ridiculously high. Your standards for yourself are so high, and everybody's like, hey, chill out. It's not that serious. But for you, you expect yourself to be this high. And we forget about, you know, our injuries, especially the invisible ones, you know, that a lot of people have a bad vibe on it. It's not bad, dude. I'm not broken. I'm not. I'm a person, and I will survive. I have survived, and I will prosper. Just allow me to grow.
Yeah.
And you know,
100%.
that's that bad thing that we don't take care of our veterans. We really don't.
Yeah.
Maybe this is something we could do as a city, is make certain that our police, our social workers, our medical communities, that they are aware of what it is like in this transitioning from the military to civilian life, plus with all these added things like PTSD or whatever. And I also going to say, like, a lot of people get PTSD from a sexual assault or harassment too. But PTSD, a lot of people, I've known several veterans who have PTSD, and I've researched, a lot of them are getting a condition called fibromyalgia, which is an invisible disease. And it carries with it also physical pain, brain fog, and all sorts of other problems. And it's not just emotional. It's not also just, mental issues, but it's physical issues that all compound to mess with your head. And so maybe that's something as a community we need to be focusing on, some way to help people transition, because so many people stay, and military people do decide to retire in this area.
I think that's, I've done a lot of work professionally, and also because of family members with mental health issues. And I think that on the one hand, you want people to become more aware, more sensitive, which is why we've pushed for more investment in the police department's a CIT program, the crisis intervention team, because it is so important for them to show up prepared, right? It's not the same. If someone is in crisis, whatever the diagnosis is, the way that you present is extremely important, because you can de-escalate and save them, right? But
1,000%. One time we were kind of doing a suicide awareness program with my unit, and one of our NCOs made the comment, if you commit suicide, you're weak. And there was a soldier, private in that group, that overheard him, that had really been struggling with his own mental health. And it really broke him down, and it immediately made his leaders not a safe place. The second that he heard that, he just knew, okay, this is not the place where I can talk, or I can go to somebody if I need something. And that needs to be the first place they go, because that's how you save people's lives, and that's how you support each other. And ultimately he got the NCO apologized and stuff, but it's just things like that just be aware.
Suicide is very high. It wasn't very something that you would get taunted for, like, it's not, it's nothing, or like you're weak, or you can't handle it, you can't hack it. There are multiple ways to insult someone. And the person that's thinking of it at that time, because it does run through your head regardless of how many years you've served, when you are having mental health issues, it's almost seen as a selfless act, because you feel like you're a burden. And I'm speaking from experience. You feel like you're a burden because you can't quite figure yourself out yet, and you keep making mistake after mistake after mistake. So you feel it like it's a selfless act. But I cannot stress this enough. There is not enough done for our veterans. I am a statistical veteran. I do unfortunately have a DWI, because I relied on this. I cannot go apply for a job and say, well, the VA wasn't helping me, so I relied on this, and then it resulted consequently on this. It's my fault. I did it. I should have gotten the help that I got, that I so willingly and jumpingly joined, they should have been so willingly to help somebody in that state of mind.
Mhm.
And if it wasn't, I mean, for me calling almost every day and saying, somebody cancels, can you put me in? It took about 6 months to a year for me to finally get seen by the VA. And the damage done between that year was already done. It was already over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a miracle that you survived that, because 6 months without proper medication and therapy is huge. It's huge. And like you said, there's damage that cannot be undone. Were you, do you all know if you're able to, or you had the opportunity, or maybe, I don't know if it was there, to access county services?
They give you the 1-800 hotline. I used to carry it in my
Yeah.
wallet. I don't anymore.
Wow.
But they do give you a 1-800 suicide hotline. And I did call it one day in my worst of times. And I'm sorry to say it was a joke. They basically answer your call, and they ask you where you're at. They ask you your place. They ask you where you live. They ask you who's your doctor. And then they ask you to call 911. So they're not there to talk you through it. I'm not expecting sympathy or pity or, anything like that, but just listen. That's all we ask is for you to listen. That's all we need.
Did you
And,
say that the suicide hotline, Karina? What
Correct.
number were you calling?
It was the one, the VA has one. They give it to everybody. I think
But
we can
it's
look
like a help, like a helpline. Yeah, I don't need it, but it's like, was it like a helpline for
So
suicide?
the VA has their own dedicated helpline, and you can find it on the mental health website on the va.gov. But I'll bring up the phone number right now for you guys. And like Karina said, all it is just a phone number that you dial, and they'll kind of tell you, oh, okay, well, thank you. So the Veterans Crisis Line is actually 1-800-273-8255.
that they just asked where you live, who's with you, is anyone around you, and they ask you to call 911, which does not solve it. It goes back to that bad stigma of you having, all of that issues, all of those issues could have easily been over and done with, not over and done with, I'm sorry, that was a poor choice of words, but easily taken care of, had a mental health advisor been there, or, or the things that I hear is that there's a lot of veterans in El Paso, so you got to wait. Well, is there any way that we can do video conferences? Is there any way that we can have more health advisors that can help people through it? Because I don't want to see anybody else go through what I did, because there's no guarantee that everyone is going to make it out. There's no guarantee behind that.
When you left, was there any sort of transition plan for you, with them knowing what you had been through and the fact that you had been on medication with
the whole PTSD, I didn't like what I was taking. I was taking Klonopin, and it would make you very drowsy. A lot of my medication at that time would kind of turn you into a zombie sorts. Like you were there, but you were not there. Your physical body was there, but mentally you were not there. And when you transition, they give you a certain amount of medication so you can make it to the following time, but they don't offer, it's not just the medicine that you need.
Right.
You need that one-on-one, like that understanding of, I'm going to make it out, or I'm going to be okay, or I will overcome it. And that's not given to you. And in the one, and I hate to call it a joke, but they don't really help you. And if the VA is overwhelmed as it says it is, then we need more doctors. Then we need more sources. Then outsource us out to the public, and don't limit the people that we can see or cannot see. It's been almost 4 years since I was medically retired, and I just now made, besides my own personal ambition to progress, I have finally found a psychiatrist and a therapist that I am completely at ease with. That
Yeah.
took 4 years. It should not take that long for that to happen, because like I said, not everyone will make it out.
I think that even instilling maybe programs after deployment, like, you know, preparing people to adapt back into civilian life, that like giving them, you might experience this could happen, like things like that, just helping to prepare, making sure that
Yes.
it's just so aware, so that way people aren't returning home and spend their first year out being like, what's going on with me, what's wrong with me,
Well,
am I losing my mind?
they do have programs for you, but it's all like in a week or
And like a
day
PowerPoint
type,
presentation.
7 to
and
10
it's a
days.
PowerPoint presentation, and
Mhm.
it's like, okay, so this is what you're gonna do, and this is what you can do, and this is how you do a resume,
And then
this
you
is how
sign the paper.
you're a normal
and,
human being, and this is how you do this. Okay, you're out. Bye. Have
yeah.
fun. You're like, it's not. It's all that information is so rushed. And then the VA, you know, they always say you have sources. Like I've seen the homeless people that say I'm a veteran, and something I've always told my partner is, you know, there is sources for them not to be homeless. They do have the option to do things. Unfortunately, there's a wait list, and you have to have a phone number, and you have to have a place to where you live so they can
Yeah.
send you things. And, you know, it all trickles down. It's like you can get there, but you kind of have to have this, and this, and this, and then you can get the help. And it's not so freely offered. And I feel that's where we are failing our people.
So I'll go ahead and piggyback something of what Mary mentioned earlier. Our leadership, our city, our county, our congressional leadership at this point. I was actually one of the veterans here in El Paso that kickstarted Veterans Affairs Advisory Committee with the city of El Paso and Veterans Advisory Board with the county of El Paso. However, and this is just my personal opinion as a veteran, I feel like even though we were able to create those committees to help our leadership in the city and the county understand what we're going through, there's so much blowback, there's so much negativity around it that they're refusing to say, you know what, you guys are right. That is something that we need help with. And this year, barely, 2015 is when the city committee was actually formed here in El Paso. It took 5 years for County of El Paso, City of El Paso to actually bring in an organization from outside of El Paso, from Houston, combine arms to do a survey to find those gaps in services that the city and the County of El Paso could provide. And I'm talking about there's almost 100,000 veterans in El Paso currently who are here. That is not including the active duty service members and their families. And the part that really, really broke my heart and it hurt me myself as a veteran is when I sat there at those meetings with the combined arms leadership and the city of El Paso veterans. I forgot what his formal title is, but he pretty much advises the city council and the mayor on the issues. And he told me, well, Fort Bliss doesn't count. Just because they're here now, it does not mean that they're going to be here tomorrow. And I looked at him and I was like, do you realize you're pretty much telling these active duty service members who have the potential of staying here and making this their home? Oh, you know what, guys? We don't need you today. We don't need you tomorrow. We don't need you to stay here because that's an extra burden. That's an additional burden that you're bringing into this city. And just like Karina said, police departments are not equipped to deal with particular issues. And I say this wholeheartedly. I am prior law enforcement officer. I work for Department of Justice. There's so many of us out here who want to help and want to understand and want to put our best foot forward into the community. But there's so many burdens and shutdowns and no, not today, maybe next budget, maybe budget after that everything just kind of gets clouded and put away swept under the rug, and there's no solution. At the end, there is no real solution. And that was the part that broke my heart as I struggled through finding, like Karina said, those resources for our homeless veterans. You know, the struggle that we had to deal with Sun Metro telling us we can't give veterans a free bus pass. Why not? You're already running the same route. You're not spending extra gas, extra maintenance. There's plenty empty seats on this Sun Metro bus, but you're refusing to say, you know what? This man has no vehicle, but he really needs to make it to this mental health appointment.
Yeah.
How can we get him there? What can we do to get him on that bus without him having to pull out that $2.50 that he could be able to use for his breakfast, lunch, for dinner today?
They started this bus. It's basically you go and you sign up, and they will pick you up from home and they will take you back home. What they failed to tell you is the amount of time that it takes to get you back home. So I did go to an appointment. I did make it on time. However, it took 5 hours after that appointment for me to get back home.
Yeah. Because
So
they're
I
not
had-
given enough resources to be able
Correct.
to actually accomplish the job.
So having a TBI, and it wasn't probably the smartest decision I made. However, I did have to, push through, and I had to, okay, I'm not going to get dizzy today, and I'm not going to forget where I'm going, because I have to make it to this appointment, and I don't want to stay there for 5 hours, and I want to make it home. It's just failure after failure after failure, and there's no accountability, and it's just, it was on you. It's your fault. So now, and I use myself as an example because that's the only, proper example I have, is now if I do decide to go get a job, I have to put on there that I was arrested. I have to put on there that I did have a DWI. I'm not going to be able to explain how I am to you guys right now, and you guys understand. I'm not going to be able to do that. It's just going to be, you know what? You're not fit, and taken away. I lost my clean record for failed mental health. How is that fair to the veterans? How is that fair to myself? We served honorably and selflessly, and now we are pretty much
paying
damned,
a price for it. Yeah.
and we're paying the price for failure. And how are we going to fix this? How are we going to address it for future and for current service members who have that issue? How are we going to help them? How are we going to say that this was a mistake, that it won't be repeated? You know what I mean? Like, if I do decide to do something, how am I supposed to overcome that? You can't expunge that. You can't erase that. That's permanent. I joined the military with a clean record, and I'm leaving with one for failed mental health. That's horrible. That's the price I paid. How many people have paid that price as well? And how many people become depressed and get even more anxiety, and then are harder on themselves because they dedicated so much and they lost it for lack of attention.
Yeah.
So Karina, when you were arrested, were you given a choice to actually be part of the Veterans Court?
I was not. I didn't even know about it.
Okay, so I'll bring this up for anybody that's listening out there, or if they know a veteran. Veterans Court is actually here in El Paso, and they're one of the few courts here in Texas that operate exactly because of that, to bring down possible charges that could ruin a veteran's life. And currently it's Judge Angie Burrill. She's no longer going to be here past this election, but I mentored at the Veterans Court, and I know that it can actually make a difference, especially when it comes to charges like that. and I'm very, very sorry that you were not even given that opportunity or presented that opportunity or even given an intro to be told, hey, you know what, would you be interested in this? But for anybody who is out there, I think that that would be one of the options that they should keep open, God forbid, if they get into that type of situation.
Because
Yeah.
Karina wasn't given that opportunity, is it possible that she could file something in response to that? To get her
So I
record?
would have to do some research. I'm not 100% sure. I can ask some of my friends who still work there, but I'm not 100% sure how it would work already once she's been convicted.
I think
You know, I understand we don't want people drinking while intoxicated. However, in our culture, and especially when you have problems, we self-medicate with alcohol. And we need to find some better way of handling this.
And I think, Corina, I appreciate all of you, but I really appreciate you opening up about all of this, because as a lawyer, sometimes I do get the chance to pull back all of the layers on my clients' stories, right? Like what you're seeing now is a consequence of a number of failures by these systems. And something that Alina has brought up, which is, I think, extremely important, is the fact that there is no integrated sort of knowledge of all the services available. So
That is one of the biggest issues in the military in all forms, is just there are resources, but nobody knows about them.
exactly.
And they're just under wraps, and you have to, if you're not aware of them or constantly searching for them, you're going to have no idea what to do. That goes for education, healthcare, every aspect of everything, unfortunately.
Yeah,
So County of El Paso actually was, the Veterans Advisory Board for County of El Paso was able to pull a handbook of resources here for El Paso that's on the County of El Paso website. And unfortunately, it gets outdated because organizations open, close, people provide services, and then they don't. But that was one of the first things that the Veterans Advisory Board did do. However, just like Michaela said, everybody in the military, post-military, is so territorial about what they own. This is mine. I did this. You know, I'm not going to give up these rights to a resource that I feel I brought to the table. So we literally had to play tug of war with some of these places and some of these people, including, unfortunately, our politicians, our city leadership at the time, to tell them, hey, you have all these contacts. Why not give it to us? Let us put it all together in one place where everybody can access it. What's the issue? Why is it a problem?
Right.
And half of the time, you know, they're like, well, it's because this organization approached me. It doesn't matter. If I have a resource, I don't care if I've never met you. I want that resource available to you.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate outcome of being in the military, of living that military service life. Just like Karina said and Michaela said, we're taught not to share, not to talk, not to do anything. We're supposed to be these robots, these molded robots that have no feelings, no attitude, no passion other than what you're told to be passionate about.
One of the resources that I did get off of, I think, was it the VA? It was the VA. It was a therapist. I think it was occupational therapy. They had told me that there's this place that does service dogs, because I was talking to him about how I needed one and how I really wanted one. And it was Paws Down Training, who does it, who works with veterans in particular, you know, to train your dog to be your service dog, because if not all dogs can be trained, but if your dog is already attached to you and it already knows how you are and how you react, I went 2 paws down and they were actually able to train my dog, you know. And
Oh,
service
wow.
dogs are also have a bad, that they've gotten bad names because, you know, people just use them to use them, and you know, you can't just have them around, or people ask the wrong questions, or they just pick up their chihuahua and they're like, "This is my service dog," you know. But
Yeah.
we need to find better ways, better programs, better things to get out there for veterans, because, you know, not everyone's going to be as lucky as I was, that had family support and friend support and was able to make it out, you know.
I
And
think having, you know, worked, I've been a legal aid lawyer for 16 years, and for me, it's so important for us to screen people, because you don't know when you show up and you happen to find this agency or an entity that can help you, right? Someone told you about it and you happen to run into it. You happen to get through the intake number. But you don't know all of your issues. And so the intake questions are so important, because that's where we catch things that people don't even know that there's an issue with.
Yeah.
And so I think, like in your case, Corina, what if when you were booked, someone had said, "Are you a veteran? Are you a service member?" Right? And then had directed you directly to the mental health court, because someone, I feel like, I understand, I love the value of the directories for people, but you're not going to get them to everyone. And like you said, they get outdated. So it's like, how do we catch people so that there's a red flag? I know people who went through the mental health court and they were arrested. They should have not been arrested, should have gone to the psych center, but they were arrested and then they got diverted into the mental health court. But it took advocacy. It took someone like me, who's a lawyer, saying, what about this other resource? And so it has to be automatic, because otherwise, how do you advocate for yourself in the middle of a crisis?
even then, when they do know, they actually do know. When you do get booked, they do ask you, have you served? They are, or are you currently serving? So they do have that knowledge. I think I'm not bashing our police department, but unfortunately they do lack that knowledge. And when I actually had a bad incident when I was transported, I was pulled out of the van and my head was hit. And I did tell this person, you know, like, you cannot do that. I have a head injury.
Yeah.
And who are they going to believe, was basically said to me. And like, why do we treat our people this way? It's not okay. We need to understand that veterans and anyone, not just veterans, but anyone having a mental health background, you know, you have to ask, you have to know. And especially if you're getting booked, when you're getting booked and you're upstairs and they're asking you those questions, they easily can give you those resources. They can tell you, hey, call this number. Just like the bail bonds are listed on that board, they should have that number for Veterans Court. So they're quick to get you in trouble. They're quick to take all your stuff, but they also, you know, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, this is over here. Oh well. But anyways, you know, that's not okay. Plenty of veterans that do get angered. You know, if you go and you arrest a veteran, we don't like being confined. It's not that we don't like cops, it's just we don't like being confined. So you go and you grab us and our PTSD kicks in and we snap out. Now we're in trouble for resisting arrest. And that's not taken into, you know, if that person would have even just taken the time and looked at my identification, it says it on there. If they would have just taken that simple time, those 2 seconds to be empathetic and be a human being, and to know that, yes, we did get in trouble, but we are still human, and took in that time to address it, I could have probably been saved. It's just failure after failure. And, you know, we can't do this. We need active, and like she said, she goes and she tries, and we're just, well, they're not going to be here, or nah, don't worry about it. We cannot be seen like that. We selflessly gave our lives to you, and now we need help. So
Yeah.
help.
Absolutely. Well, as I said from the beginning, this would be a very, very worthwhile conversation. And I'm just learning so much right now. And I hope that everyone else is also listening and just paying attention, because you're just elucidating a lot of issues. We are going to move into the topic of sexual assault. And so if you are watching and there are children that you don't want to listen to this, or you yourself are afraid of having a trigger, or this triggering some memories or pain for you, this is sort of like the pause in between that. And we've heard a lot about, not enough, but we've heard a lot about the case of Vanessa Guillen. And again, like all the other things that have happened recently, has brought attention to an issue that has been on the back burner for decades and decades, right? This did not begin with Vanessa, and it will likely not end with her. And so I was sharing with you all earlier that I looked up some numbers on sexual assault in the military, and the Defense Department puts out an annual report on sexual assault in the military, which to me is already incredibly sad that this agency has to research this and survey service members every single year. In 2018, they identified 20,500 instances of unwanted sexual contact across the Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Marines. And the numbers are going up. And it could be that people are more comfortable reporting, but it could also be that the incidences themselves are going up. Women make up 20% of the military, but they're targets of 63% of these assaults, with the youngest and lowest ranking women being the most at risk. Mm-hmm. And so this is of course a huge problem. One of the articles I was reading talked about the fact that reforms, as we've seen in other instances, have been tried and they have failed. There's an estimated $200 million that has been thrown into this problem, right? Of studying it, of instituting trainings, instituting reporting mechanisms and reports, but yet we still have this ongoing problem. And so we wanted to talk about some things if you feel comfortable. And if you don't, we absolutely respect that. We are just hoping to start thinking about how we start to transform these cultures of hyper masculinity, what we think of as toxic aggression in these different spaces, and why it's particularly dangerous for both men and women, because men are also victims of sexual assault in the military, given the spaces that you occupy, right? Often you're living where you work, and you're far away from everyone. And as was said earlier, you don't have communication with your loved ones. You're in a bubble. And so what can we do to advocate for some changes in this particular area?
Go ahead, Karina.
Oh, sorry. One of the things that actually Michaela and I had mentioned earlier is that people are not held accountable as they should for sexual harassment or sexual assault. So we have standards for no drug usage. We have standards for no DWIs, correct? Now, when somebody gets a sexual harassment complaint or a sexual assault conviction, they're still allowed to maintain their career, or they're allowed to retire. In a personal experience that I've had, they're allowed to retire or face the consequences. They're given one or the other. And that's not correct. I think what we need to do is, hold that sexual assault, if not at that level, like Michaela said, even higher, because we are essentially our own family. We build our own family within the military. You do become our brother, you do become our sister, and we're supposed to trust you 110% with our backs turned or with facing each other. Mm-hmm. And if we cannot do that, then you have no place next to me. You have no place next to the person, because if you cannot adhere to the standards that we are told we will be to, like, for the Air Force, integrity first, service before self. You know, those are the things that we're told. If we cannot be held to that standard in everything, then you do not belong in the military. And sexual harassment is one of those standards. We claim zero tolerance, but people still get to keep their career. People still get to retire. People still get their benefits.
Often when something like that happens, you just change units. They move you, so, oh, you don't have to be around that person anymore. Why would you want that person around any of your soldiers at all if they're a danger to your soldiers? I think the best thing to do is instill, if the men and women who are sexually assaulting people or sexually harassing people are very, very afraid and aware of the consequences that come with doing that, then the numbers would go down. If we instill fear and people are afraid to hurt people because it will ruin their life, it'll ruin their career, they'll be dishonorably discharged. If there are genuine circumstances that come with assaulting people and continually harassing people, then the numbers will go down. If people are, if people know without a doubt that if they smoke weed, they're going to be dishonorably discharged and it is going to affect them for the rest of their life, they're going to be really, really way more cautious to make sure they don't smoke weed, and they're going to prioritize that, so if without a doubt that if you sexually assault that girl and she's intoxicated, or you had the opportunity and you grabbed her, and without a doubt that that is going to result in you being dishonorably discharged, then you might not do it. You might think twice, and everybody could be safer. So,
it's really good to see.
I'm sorry. Often the victim is retaliated against, or the victim is the one that is assigned to a different unit, or assigned, or having to basically uproot themselves and move somewhere else. So when they go to that next area, they're seen as the troubled one, or the one that brings trouble, or the one that talks too much, or the aggressor, or anything like that, when it shouldn't be that way. If I get a DWI and my partner's with me, I'm the one that gets in trouble. I'm the one that gets, get kicked out. So the person causing that sexual assault should be completely removed from that area, because like I said, we're supposed to trust each other 100%.
Mm-hmm. No, I remember one time in basic training, we had the SHARP communication, or the SHARP presentation. They did a PowerPoint on sexual assault and harassment in the military. And we had gotten that whole lecture, and it triggered a female soldier who had experienced a form of sexual assault prior to her military service. And she broke down, she started to cry and stuff, and she needed support. And one of our drill sergeants, a male drill sergeant, called her into his office, and I went with her as her battle buddy. And she was triggered because another female soldier had made the comment that if a female is drunk or intoxicated and gets assaulted, it's partially her fault as well. And that's what caused her to break down. And when she was talking to the drill sergeant, she was crying, and she said, well, it was because this soldier said this, and it just triggered me, because it doesn't matter how drunk you are. It doesn't matter. Nobody should ever be able to take advantage of you like that. And the drill sergeant stopped her and said, well, if a little girl, goes out and gets drunk on her own, wouldn't that make you kind of at fault? And I looked at her, and she handled it super well, because in that moment, I think she knew she handled it very, very well. I was very surprised at how well she handled it. And she just kind of said, like, yes, drill sergeant. And then we walked out of the room, and I looked at her and I was like, what? Everything he just said isn't true. And she was like, don't worry. I know that everything he just said was absolutely ridiculous. But in that situation, all of a sudden, the military wasn't a safe place for her to express that. She was rejected from her feelings, even though this happened prior to service. She was now serving, and she was obviously struggling with those issues. And it would have been great if he had instantly been like, here's the resources, here's the number, let's get you to who you're supposed to talk to. But instead he took it in his own hands, and he was uneducated and he was unaware, and he was significantly higher ranked than us. And we were in training and in basic, so you have no say when it comes to your drill sergeant at that time. And she couldn't even defend herself. It was so upsetting. And I instantly knew, wow, the military is not going to be the safe place for her to get the help that she needs from her circumstances. And that was so upsetting.
I think with military, a lot of people forget that we're looked down upon as women. And I say this because it's happened to me. In 2006, when I was stationed in Hawaii, I had one particular NCO that kept coming to my work site every single day, Monday through Friday. Let me take you out to dinner. Come on, let's go. Why won't you let me? And I brought it up to my leadership, and I told them, this is the unit that he's in. This is who he is. This is his name. This is his rank. And they looked at me, the NCO at the time, and he was like, have you ever thought about changing? And I looked at him and what do you mean, Sergeant? Well, your uniform seems to be a little too tight. And I looked at him, I was like, well, I didn't get an option on my uniform because CIF, the clothing facility, issues it to you. I don't get to, like, your first year in the military, you don't get to pick and choose what you want to wear and how you want to wear it. You get brought into this big old hangar, and they tell you, here it is. And it takes an act of Congress to actually tell somebody, you know what, this uniform doesn't fit me right. Can I go exchange it? You need a memo. You need a million and one different little things just so men can feel comfortable enough around you wearing a particular uniform. And that's absurd. That is freaking ridiculous. That's like walking into a public place and telling a man, you know what, you should not be wearing that muscle shirt because women will look at you wrong. You're just a piece of meat. And that's, there's been so many years. There's been so many years of my military career where I literally felt like that. And that's pathetic. That is heartbreaking. What hurts even more is that, just like Karina, the person that assaulted me, all he got was a unit transfer, and they told him, bad boy, you better not ever go next to her. Don't you dare go into her barracks room. And that was his punishment. That was the extent of his punishment. And this was the same man who told me, you will never, ever get promoted if it's up to me.
It's not even in the military requirements for assault or harassment charges. The way a person looks is not allowed to even be used. So that I apologize, my internet has been cutting in and out. Go ahead.
I remember one time, and I've only served for about 2 years, but I remember a group of privates, all male privates, were overheard by some NCOs talking about my Instagram pictures and the pictures I'd posted, and they were talking inappropriately about me. Not one of those boys was reprimanded, but I was pulled aside and I was told that if I was going to post pictures like that, I should make it private. I shouldn't post pictures like that. They accused me. They had said, I had always thought of you as professional. I was so surprised to hear that you post these pictures, that you post things on your social media. And it was nothing crazy. I'm very passionate about fitness. It was very much things like that. And I was so taken back. And I'm 22 years old. It's my social media. I can post what I want. If some boys are speaking inappropriately about me as my leadership, the first thing you should have done would say, shut up, you guys are not allowed to speak about any of the soldiers that you work next to like that. but instead I was told that I should change my Instagram. When I responded, I'm not going to change my Instagram. I'm not going to delete the pictures. I'm not going to make it private. I'm comfortable with the way my social media is. And it was nothing illegal, nothing that, there's our social media guidelines that we have to follow, and those were being followed. I wasn't breaking any rules at all. It was just the way that I looked in my pictures. And when I responded with no, I was told that they had always thought I was professional and were disappointed to hear this. And then the NCO who talked to me kind of just walked away dismissive of anything I had said. And I was so upset. I was just, and it was a female NCO who actually was the one to confront me. And I was so surprised. I was like, where's that support in that sense? That these little 18-year-old privates were sitting in a circle and no reprimanding, nothing at all, just me getting the backlash for it.
Have you all discussed the I Am Vanessa Guillen bill that Vanessa's family is backing and LULAC is backing? And it would require a third party, some sort of organization that you could go, Michaela, to report something like this, and other than the military, and maybe they'd take you more seriously, and also maybe without reporting, getting it on your record or whatever until it's handled properly.
There's actually never anything that will stay private. They
Well,
have this, that we have our sharp complaints, or the SARC for the Air Force, and you have the ability to report it restricted, and you have the ability to report it unrestricted. Even though mine was unrestricted, there were people that who I did not tell what happened still found out about it.
24 hours.
And that this would be outside the military.
Hours, they would have to question the military. Anybody who is outsourced and questions the military, you have to go through your chain of command. You have to let your first sergeant know. You have to let your NCO know. You have to let everyone know. You cannot just be approached by anybody. And, it is something that I fear a lot of us fear, is the retaliation part of it. And if you do, confront your abuser, or you do stand up for yourself, like I have, I am aggressive, I am loud, I am, and that's not the case at all. I am standing my ground. And there's a bad thing for females, when we fought for equality. So now it's, like, oh, well, you want to be equal with us, right? Go pick up that whatever, and it's like, dude, like, relax. Like, I guess I want to be equal. I just want to be treated, the same as you.
Same.
That's it, and it becomes a competition on whether I can pick up something or whether Michaela can pick up something. It becomes a competition. It becomes retaliation. And it's something that you're already trying to deal with emotionally, and you're already trying to deal with mentally. And then on top of that, you have the retaliation. So even being outsourced, your company, your battalion, your squadron, whatever the case may be, will be notified of it. And everyone, and it'll trickle down little by little. And that retaliation, no matter what, will come up. It will come.
Yeah. As a female in the military, your accomplishments are dismissed consistently. If you do well on a PT test, it's, oh, well, you have to only make the female standard. Oh, everything you do as a female in the military, somebody is going to dismiss, which is unfortunate. So you can never be proud of any accomplishment because it's going to be taken from you.
LULAC is proposing that no more people, especially minorities, join the military until this is fixed. I don't know if they're going to do a formal boycott or what, but that's what they're recommending.
Honestly, I think we're going to be hurting ourselves, essentially, because it is a security risk to our enemies, foreign and domestic, to let them know that we are going to boycott the military. Unfortunately, that is a double-edged sword that we really can't, get to. And I feel that we just need to increase our laws, because if we tell people we're going to start boycotting our military, like I said, our enemies, foreign and domestic, are going to take advantage of that. We just need to
I'm
be able to
afraid they
hold our
already
people.
know. Karina, I'm afraid that unfortunately they already know.
We need to be able to hold our people accountable and
I
stop.
think that's
Yeah,
the
well,
situation. The military, for me, the military is the proudest thing I've ever done. I love serving. It is the thing I'm most proud of, and I hope to serve for as long as I can. But it's just about changing the system within the military to make sure that it's comfortable for everybody, no matter your gender, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, that you are safe. And it's a safe place for the people serving. I think that that's just what's most important.
What do you-
let's hope
And I
that
think
that will happen with unfortunate death of Vanessa Guillen.
Well, and I think, our campaign talks a lot about transformation. And that means different things for different people. How do you all envision a transformation? We're seeing an increase in women enlisting. We're seeing an increase in women being assaulted. So what is it going to take to change this when we understand that the reforms haven't worked, right? The trainings haven't worked. We still are not having people held accountable.
We
That's
we
one
implement the change.
accountability.
We need to implement the change. We need to implement the change, because when it
Not
happened
only
to me,
that,
I had a battle buddy who stayed by my side and never left my side from that day forward. I was never alone, and I will always and forever be grateful to him. I was never alone. I was never by myself. I would never go anywhere without him, and if I did, he would rip me a new one, because he told me, don't go anywhere without me ever again. You know, we need to live to that standard of battle buddies and be each other's battle buddy.
What's a battle buddy?
A battle buddy or a wingman is basically
your battles are the people that work beside you. They're the people in your team. They're your brothers, your sisters. You're supposed to depend on them no matter what. You know that your battle's got you and you've got your battle, and that's your battle buddy.
You're always you get a battle buddy or a wingman, meaning you don't go anywhere without them. You can talk to them, and we need to stand up for each other. That's one thing that I learned about the military, is that we need to work cohesively as a unit, and we need to stand by our brothers and sisters who do in fact get sexually assaulted. And although that group over there is laughing about it, somebody needs to stand up and say, hey, stop, that's not right. And yeah, you might get made fun of for it at that moment, but you know that you stood up for your person and you did not let it happen. And that's something that we're missing a lot, is that loyalty, that bond that we have as our military. Because if anything has taught me anything, is that military family and those military friends that you create, that's for life.
Yeah, I do think policies being instilled just protecting female soldiers. I think even pulling female soldiers aside once a week, once a month, checking in, asking questions, making a safe place, training NCOs how to handle these situations. What do you do? How do you, where would you go? Creating a safe place for even small offenses, things that, so-and-so said this to me or so-and-so said that to you, instead of being trained to dismiss things and don't take it that seriously. Oh, he was drunk. Oh, like he's like that with everybody. Instead of dismissing it, taking everything seriously, because even if, oh, that's just him, boys will be boys, that can no longer be an excuse, because obviously allowing that has resulted in very, very heavy negative effects. It has been proven on multiple occasions that sexual assault victims experience severe PTSD. And, we want to protect our soldiers who go through combat and who are been deployed from experiencing their PTSD. We should also protect our soldiers from experiencing PTSD from sexual assault and sexual harassment as well. As long as it's a priority and people are trying to develop policies to instill, then we can begin to protect our soldiers.
And I think that changes may come, but they're not going to be immediate. And I say this wholeheartedly because look at what happened with our Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. It took decades for them to move forward. And even then, LGBT community within military ranks was looked down upon. And most of the sexual assaults that happened to those men and women were not considered sexual assaults. They were considered hazing. They fell into a whole different category because few male soldiers decided to sexually assault a gay man with, and I've seen it personally, with a broomstick, with whatever. It was not considered a sexual assault. It was considered hazing because it was a man thing. It was a manly thing. They wanted to, make him a man. They wanted to make him stronger and tougher because he was showing off feministic features. And that's what's wrong with our military. We were, as women, going back to World War II, we were given a chance to serve this country and make a difference and do things that a lot of men and women are afraid to do. They're afraid to go up and step up and sign that dotted line and say, you know what, I'm doing this. And some way, somehow, all that sacrifice gets lost in translation. And these men and women that go through that sexual harassment and sexual assault, they're reprimanded. And I can't count how many times I've stood next to soldiers who were threatened. We're going to give you chapter 10 if you don't back out of your statement. Or they'll be pulled into military, and military is very good about making you feel guilty by yourself. And I've seen it happen where they'll walk you right by the room where you're, where the offender is. All it takes is one look. That's all it takes for one person who's afraid to change their mind, to change their statement, to decide to not speak up, to say, you know what, never mind, this is not what happened. And unfortunately, it's not unique to the military. We hear about it so often where you're surrounded by people who are intimidating to you. That's bottom line, no questions asked. So when they sit there and they look at you and they tell you, are you sure? They're literally telling you, you know what, it's time to change your mind. That's not really what happened. This is what happened. Here's the fluffy, cute, kind of not so bad version of the big bad wolf that we're giving you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, as long as I've been around military since 2005, that's how I feel sexual assault is packaged. Oh, it can't be that bad. It's not that bad. Vanessa, again, is not the first person this has happened to. And that's the part that breaks my heart as a woman. I have a son, and I've told him over my dead body, never, ever will you join the military, because I saw the ugly side of it. Am I proud of my service? Of course. I loved every moment, every lesson learned, every friend that I made. But until military changes for the better, and not just in sexual assault aspect, but in everything else, little changes like with this BLM movement, they're changing it where promotion boards, you're no longer allowed to include a photo of the soldier. That should have happened years ago. Years. Why does it take something so drastic occurring, such as Vanessa again being buried in a shallow grave, for somebody to say, you know what, it's time to wake up. It's time for us to get up and stand up for something. And I love my peers. I love my battle buddies, Michaela and Karina, but we have so many women out there who are not as outspoken as we are. Yeah. We have women out there who are suffering in silence, who are too scared to say, you know what, I was assaulted. This is the person. This is who's done it to me. And Veronica does 20,000, I guarantee you that it's more in 60,000. It's way more than 20,000. I can almost guarantee that if true numbers came out, it would probably be about 50, 60,000, because that's the culture of military. It's a toxic culture on so many levels. And I feel like I am a part of that culture, because when I had the chance to stand up, unlike Karina, I did it. I chickened out and I walked out and I walked away. And it was so disheartening to know that the only punishment this person got, even after a rape kit, a trip to the hospital, and all of that, for them to come to my face and tell me, you know what, he's transferring units. You're being transferred to a unit you have no clue about, even though you've already been established and you were doing good. I moved from E1 to E4. I moved 4 ranks in 18 months. And all of that went down the drain just like that.
Oh, wow.
Because one individual decided to do something that was not okay at all. And people love taking the easy way out. And that's the part that hurts the most about Vanessa, is that the person who did this to her, he took the easy way out. He really did.
I think we need to go ahead.
I think that what we struggle with often is just male soldiers seeing female soldiers and feeling that our body is not our body. It does not belong to us, that they can take our body and make it their own for however many minutes they want to. And then there's no understanding of the struggle that women have to go through after that, the years and years of trying to get your body back, to feel you're in your body again. The lack of being able to look at yourself in the mirror and feel that self-respect, that's something that, especially as service women, we work so hard to gain the respect and to be soldiers. We want to make our country proud. We want to do something great. And when our peers take that from us, it sets us back so far. And then when your leadership looks down on you and dismisses you, it just will absolutely break you down, and you'll never be able to perform the way you could have had that not happened, and serve the way you could have. And if you want to develop great soldiers, these females can be some of the best soldiers you've ever seen. And, you just got to give them that opportunity and that safety.
I wouldn't necessarily discourage anybody from joining the military. I understand that it does have, it's bad. And we've seen the bad and the ugly that it has. But I would encourage people to join the military. And I would tell them to be that change. Be that change that person, that these people need.
And
make your rank
as well,
and fight for people, especially women. We can empower each other.
Yeah.
And for males to females, it doesn't matter, because it can happen to both. I strongly encourage joining the military, and I strongly encourage being there for that battle buddy and standing up for that person that needs that standing up for. I would never discourage anyone from joining the military, but I will say, be that change that we need.
And to all soldiers who think you can't, or all people who are thinking about joining but think they can't do it, I'm 5 feet tall, 100 pounds on a good day. And, I made it through. I know, Karina, you said you were 5 feet tall or 5 foot something, if we can do it, you guys, anybody can do it, so let's build a strong military with good people.
I would say join, but be the change that we need.
Well, we're wrapping. We're getting close to 2 hours, so we're probably going to wrap up. Unless y'all want to keep going with. This has been a beautiful conversation, and I think, You know, as women, we hold up half the sky. We're half of the world's population, and yet we're still struggling to break through on so many different levels. And I just thank you for your honesty and for your service, for everything that you brought to each other, and to your, you know, your female and male, you know, battle buddies and all
Yeah.
of companions.
There,
Because, you know, I imagine that it's something quite painful to be betrayed by your family, right? It's a different
Yeah.
level when someone that you have fought alongside with, someone who has also sacrificed their life alongside you as you have sacrificed yours, for these common, as Corina kept saying, these common ethics and standards. You were trained to go to battle in the same way, to be betrayed by that person, and then to be further betrayed by the people that are supposed to be protecting you. That I can't imagine the weight of that. And I hope that everyone that's been able to watch has taken it upon themselves to figure out how to make some changes, whether it's contacting your congresswoman, your US senators, or president. Everyone has to be on the same page, because as y'all have talked about, this is a toxic workplace, and it's a workplace that we rely on for our national security. So if things are broken inside that system, it is going to become, it is a security issue, right? It becomes an issue now, as Mary has brought up, whether or not there is a national boycott. I think that parents are going to have a much harder time signing away their children into the military after what's happened with Vanessa, and not just Vanessa, but her male companion, who was also found buried, right, at Fort Hood. And so we hope that these structural systemic changes will come. I appreciate both Aldina and Corina talking about these different perspectives of whether you should join or not, but this conversation has to keep going. And I very much value everything that you've said to us today. I am speechless, even though I just talked for a long time. I am just in awe of your poise and your honesty and all of your experience. You just have so much to share with the world, and I really appreciate your time today. And I hope that we can continue to follow up, and that the rest of us start to keep taking action. You know, this is how we change the world, is by talking about it over and over and over, because there was a time when women could not even serve in the military.
exactly.
And now and you are valued members of it. And so how do we ensure that you leave, intact, and not traumatized even more? So Dominic likes doing this. We usually close up our conversations with one word about how you feel right now. So I don't know if y'all have a word that you can think of that you'd like to use to describe what you feel right now.
Empowered.
That's a very, very good choice. I second that.
I think encouraged.
Just accomplished.
Yeah.
Yes, you're all so
Valued.
Absolutely.
So I hope you don't mind, Veronica, but since we are on topic of sexual assault, if we could do a moment of silence for Vanessa Guillen, I think that would be truly appreciated.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank
Of
you.
course. Thank you.
Corina, Michaela, Mary, thank you, everyone, for, I keep saying this, but I think we have the best speakers. I don't know, there's this magic that happens every time we do one of these roundtables. Thank you so much. I hope that a lot more comes out of this conversation than just these 2 hours that we spent together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Yes.
Have a
Take
good night.
care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good night.